Hi, this is Kelly from Chemistry Staffing, and I have the honor and privilege of having a conversation with our two co-founders, Matt Steen and Todd Rhodes. So guys, hello.
Hey, Kelly. How's it going?
She just said she has the honor of having a conversation with us. She never says that when it's not.
No, she doesn't.
Only for the camera, right?
Okay, yeah. That's good.
Well, hey, I just kind of wanted to talk today and get some insight on what you are learning in the church right now. Like, what are you seeing? You're talking to pastors all the time.
What are you seeing, Matt?
I see what you did there, Todd.
That's funny. I was going to kick it to Todd. You know, I think we're seeing a few things or learning a few things. I think part of what I'm learning right now is that there's a lag on who's coming back. And so Rich Birch and I, we talked about this a few weeks ago, but what we're seeing church, across the church spectrum is just the number of people that are engaged in volunteering and really kind of all in, the people that may have been there week in, week out, in January of 2020, really aren't nearly as engaged as they were. They may be coming, they may be showing up, they may be volunteering, maybe once a month or something like that. But what we're hearing a lot of from our churches is that getting people re-engaged in that volunteer capacity is seen a significant lag. And so I think that's one of the things that we're seeing. Part of some of the language that we've been using around chemistry lately is that as we look to staff in this new, this is really a new environment ministry wise, people are sick of hearing that and all that, but I think it's true. We're looking for people that do three things. And because I went to seminary, I have an acronym, it's PAD, right? We're looking for churches to pad their staff. They need people that are pastoral, people that can less, it used to be, we're all about the specialist and focusing on, but we need somebody who's got more of a pastoral presence and could come and bring some of that pastoral skill set to the teams they lead, the people that they work with. We're looking for people that are agile, that can adapt on the fly, next time an apocalypse sets in. We're also looking for developers, people who understand how to develop people, how to recruit, how to get people to really want to engage and really be a significant part of a ministry team. Because frankly, I think that's a skill that's been forgotten. I think we in a push to systematize everything, we forgot what it means to recruit people when the machine isn't already going. And so, without a developer skill set on your team, right now you're going to be on the struggle bus. It's just kind of how it is. And without a developer on your team ongoing, you might have people doing stuff and actively being involved in your church's day to day, but I don't necessarily know that it's going to be, sustainable. I don't know that it's going to be long lasting, and you may have some churn, that you're not seeing. I don't know. Todd, you think I'm on crack?
On this or just in general?
Well, let's stick to this because
stick to this. Okay. Well, I'll start here. I totally agree with you about the lag. Mm-hmm. And I don't think leaders, particularly senior pastors we talk to, really have gotten their arms around this lag part yet. Right. Mm-hmm. So we're just now starting to see some things. And honestly, I think we're at the very beginning of starting to see things. Mm-hmm. Coming out of COVID.
Because we've got 6 months, about 6 months of data to analyze now. And we're just starting to see some of these patterns.
Yeah. And honestly, I think it's going to be 1, 2, maybe 3 years of just things being wonky.
Yeah.
Just things that we're discovering because of COVID. They're going to affect our ministry that have been affecting our ministry, and we're just now getting our arms around it, and they're going to affect our ministry going forward. Just to kind of touch on what Matt said as far as volunteers. So most churches didn't. Some churches haven't met or just now starting to meet according to where they are. Yep. They're just now meeting, and they haven't met for a year and a half.
Yeah.
At the very minimum, a lot of churches didn't meet for 6 months. So what does that do? What does that do to the psyche of the people that attended your church regularly? What does that do in the minds of the people that were kind of fringe people of your church? A lot of that has to do with how engaged you've honestly been for the last year and a half with those people. But as churches get back in, what they're finding is that Matt kind of called it the machine, and it kind of is a machine, that the machine's been devastated and kind of decimated, right? So, you used to have, welcoming ministry or a greeter ministry or guest services, whatever you call it in your church, that was a large group of people that did all the hospitality stuff, but they didn't do it for 6 months, right? So now churches are starting all back up, and they're just thinking all those people are going to come back, that you just start the rolling schedule again and everybody's going to be, and they're not.
Yeah.
They're just not, because that whole thing has been dormant for 6 months.
Yeah.
So a lot of frustration that we're hearing is that just people aren't coming back. And that's true. But the other part of the puzzle is that it's going to take a lot of work to get back.
Yeah.
Right. And we're finding on the candidate side and on the church side, people that either, number one, don't understand that or don't want to put the work in to make that happen. Just because it is a rebuilding thing. You close down a business for 6 months and then you open up the doors again. You've got to rebuild that business. And that's kind of where we are with the church right now. A lot of rebuilding is going to have to be done. I'm hearing a lot from pastors and churches that are like, churches are 70 to 80% back attendance wise, and that's kind of the new norm. That's all good. It's not good, but it is what it is. I think everybody's kind of like, it is what it is. But those 70 or 80% that are coming back, as Matt said, aren't necessarily volunteering, aren't exactly getting involved. And quite honestly, they're not coming back every week like they were before.
Yeah.
They're coming back a couple weeks a month, and then they'll get up maybe a little late and watch online. So online's still a really important piece. You still gotta connect with those people that are catching you online, because the people that were there every week before are starting to come back, but they're still online too.
Yeah. And it's easy for us to talk through this and have people just feel like, oh Lord, here we go, another kick in the gut, everything's miserable, sky's falling. But I don't necessarily think it's that. And maybe this is the eternal optimist in me. I think this gives us, frankly, an opportunity, right? I think this gives us an opportunity to kind of step back and say, okay, so our resources are different than they were before. Our participation is different than it was before, and all of this. So, maybe it's a chance for us to step back and say, okay, so where do we invest our resources for the most impact, right? How do we realign our ministries to be able to lean into what this reality is? And a lot of times, we just really struggle with that and don't know necessarily, how to go through that process. And maybe what we can do, Kelly, is share the restructuring playbook that we did, but just kind of walk through a practice of saying, okay, so as I look around where we are now, what should we start? What should we stop? What should we continue? Where if we're only going to have 70% of our people that we had pre-COVID, and of those, maybe we've only got 25% of the regular volunteers that we had. So what does that mean for us? Is there anything that, before was just kind of like a resource hog, pardon the phrase, that is kind of getting in our way, never really bore fruit, that we can kind of pull the plug on? There's some opportunity in this if we lean into that to really begin to help kind of turn our ministries. But we need to be willing to kind of step into that, and that's some hard work in and of itself. So
you think there's some denial on the pastors' sides, lead pastor sides, that there's actually some rebuilding that needs to happen?
Well, I don't. Okay, so on the pastor side, I don't think so.
Okay.
Now, in general, and you may push back on me. In general, I think that I don't know of any pastor that would look at me and say, hey, my church is perfect and all the programs we do are working excellently, right?
Right.
Now I know a ton that'll look at me and say, I really hate this ministry. It really is the bane of my existence and it needs to die. But I can't die because this person, this person, this person, and this person are really invested in it, and it's not worth the pain to pull the plug on it in order, that kind of thing, right? And so I think honestly, where people have struggled, I don't necessarily know that it's the pastor. I think it's more kind of the congregation. And I think, and I may be wrong on this, but I think we still have a little bit of time left to be able to pull the plug on something and blame COVID. And some people might say that's cowardice leadership, but I don't care. I'm just practical, right? And so maybe we've got the opportunity to pull the plug, say, hey, COVID and everything, and we really need to focus and maybe we'll come back and reevaluate later and really kind of lean into different things. I don't necessarily know that it's the pastors. I think it's more congregation leaders.
I think it's both.
Oh, okay.
Honestly, to some degree, you can't, blanket statements don't help anybody, right?
Yeah.
But this is a moment of 2021 is going to be a great year of reset, right? Where you have the opportunity to reset some programs, as Matt was talking about, and you're going to look at all these things as either a problem or an opportunity. Right. And I think we're just now, as we're getting back into the swing of things, the last year and a half for most churches has been, how do we get back to some semblance of normalcy? Right. Okay. So now we're kind of there. We're back. People are starting to come back. And what we're finding now are that things aren't as they were, even though we've tried to make them as they were. There are some things that worked pre-COVID that still work. There are some things that worked pre-COVID that don't work anymore. And I think those are the areas of frustration, and those are the areas of discovery, where, we're all the same, right? So when things don't match what we thought we're going to have, the first thing we're going to probably do is kind of bellyache and complain about them a little bit, right? And I'm starting to hear a little bit of grumblings of this isn't working, that kind of thing. Why isn't this working like it did before? And all that's good. Now's the time, though, that where you press the reset button and you figure out, okay, so we've got 25% of the volunteers that we had pre-COVID. What do we do with that? Either we have to restructure our programming to be less reliant on volunteers and our volunteer base, or we have to find a way to increase from 25 back up closer to what we were. And all those are challenges. Those are problems, but they're also challenges and opportunities. And I think the next, year is going to be trying to figure that out. We've talked all along, from even back March of last year, talking about how COVID is going to, the cracks that were already there, COVID is expanding those cracks and making those cracks more visible. And all of the kind of the trends and things that we're seeing, COVID has actually kind of moved everything faster, right? So we're in a time of discovery, of finding out where those cracks are and trying to figure out how to fix them. And there's going to be some innovation that comes out of here, and every church is going to have to figure it out, because it's, for a lot of churches where they are, you're going to find yourself, if you're a pastor or a church staff member, just scratching your head saying, this is not sustainable. What we did before COVID and what we're trying to do now is not working, and it's not sustainable, and we have to figure out how to do it. And that's where some of the innovation and some of the things are going to come in. But churches will get it, but it takes us a while, right?
Yeah.
Matt, so push back.
You're wrong.
Okay.
That's all I got. Now, I think, yeah, I think I'm there.
Kelly, tell us how we're just absolutely missing the boat.
No, I think you're right on. I think, we have to, we can't tell the future, right? And we're doing our best guess to see some trends now. My question is, Matt, I know Todd already alluded to this a little bit. Matt, what do you see on the horizon that church leaders need to know about now?
To get
ready for what's coming.
so I see two things, and they're kind of related, maybe, but maybe
Okay.
not. Okay. So here's the two things I see on the horizon, and this is where I go doom and gloom and just ruin everybody's day. I think we are going to see a wave of moral failures in the next 18 to 24 months, unlike anything we've seen before. I think we have been through a season of frustration, of isolation, and exhaustion. And we know that anybody that we coach, we tell them to avoid those situations because bad things happen. We also know that for a lot of pastors, we don't necessarily, we've got a good bit of autonomy in our day to day, and we don't have a whole awful lot of people, looking over our shoulder, looking at our schedules. And so there's a good bit of freedom that comes with that, for good or for bad. And so I think this is a season where we need to double down on having people in our lives asking us the questions that we don't want to be asked. I think this is a season to double down and be really intentional about making sure that we are wise in our day-to-day activities. I think, and this is the semi-related point to that, I think the day of kind of giving pastors a pass on things is coming to a close. Right. So I think that there was a time, and I've heard, I've been to churches where people would say, they would kind of look at something their pastor did and they'd say, that's just pastor. He just doesn't, turn in his receipts because he's disorganized.
A little dismissive and like.
Yeah, it's just kind of like they've just kind of come to the realization that they're not very good at that, or there's a personality quirk. Maybe they're just a little abrasive, or maybe they're just dismissive, or just, there's things that they just don't want to do. I think we have left that. And for some people who, that's just pastor, maybe excusing things that may not necessarily be sinful, but are unwise. I think that's kind of enabled some people to get to the point where we start going into the moral failure route, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's the tie to that. But I think the other piece of this is we are getting more and more divisive as a culture. Yeah. We're getting more and more divisive as a society, and we're seeing this play out in our churches now. And so things that used to be just kind of excused, I don't think are going to be as excused as easily anymore. And I think it may very well turn into something that may not be something we, that may be more painful down the road. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Todd, how do you?
Have I just killed the mood?
Totally. I hope you're wrong.
Yeah.
I don't think you're wrong, but I hope you're wrong.
Yeah.
Here's the way I look at it. So let's backtrack to even January, February of last year of 2020. Mm-hmm. Everybody's barreling along. Everybody's got their ministry plans. Everybody's doing pretty, according to where you're at, you're doing pretty good. You've got your year planned out, right? And then COVID hits and boom, everything's out the window. And for the next 15, 16 months, you can't do anything right. I mean, you try to do even something as silly or as simple as masks. What do you do with wearing masks? However your church or you came down or your leadership came down on that, you had people on both sides of you. Some people praising you and some people just absolutely, tearing you up over that, right?
No, you didn't have anybody praising you. All you had were people tearing you down, whether you said
that's true. Or not wearing masks. Yeah, people agree with you, but those people were the quiet ones.
Yeah, you never heard them.
But after 15 or 16 months of having your plans totally derailed, and having people just all on your case for everything, it seems, this is what we're on. We run chemistry staffing, a staffing firm. This is what we're seeing. I wrote down, we're seeing candidates that are beat up, burned out, or bitter. And I'll tell you what, if you're bitter or you're beat up, or what was the other one, burned out, that's when you start making bad decisions.
Yeah.
Every person I've ever talked to or read their story about falling from grace or falling from ministry, that happened at a time when they were beat up, burned out, or bitter. And we have a ton of candidates that we interview now that are in one of those 3 states. And we just have to have an honest conversation with them as to, you need to be healthy. And maybe even take some time out and get healthy for you and for your family before you take on your next ministry role. But honestly, a lot of the people that are beat up, burned up, and bitter are not looking to leave. They're not. They're going to hunker down because this is your church, darn it, and you're going to work through it. And you're tired, you're burned out, you're angry, but you're going to work through it just like you have before. But you're going to end up making some bad decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And those bad decisions very well could cost you your job. They very well could cost you your ministry, and they very well could cost you your family if you're not careful. So yeah, I would just expand on what Matt's saying. You've got to guard your heart during this time. If you need to get some counseling, if you need to get some help, reach out to Matt or myself. We'll try and hook you up with somebody at least you can talk to, but guard your heart. Everybody's vulnerable right now.
Yeah, I do think there's been a lot more conversation around soul care, around, taking a sabbatical, taking a break. Now the pastors need to receive that, and they need to do something about it. And that's where sometimes we fail. Nope, Sunday comes every week, so we've got to keep the machine going, and we're forgetting how much care we actually need. Week to week. So I have come across some pastors in my conversations who are taking longer sabbaticals and leaning into this time so that they can be refreshed and renewed for their congregations. But they have to be, you have to realize it, that you need it. And that's the part that's hard.
Yeah.
So
it's a tough time. Everybody knows it's a tough time, but you just have to, you can't always just power through just like you always did.
Right.
So sometimes you really need to get a little bit of extra help and so you don't totally flame.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would love to hear from our audience as well.
On that note,
what have you seen in in the recent past in the church, and what do you feel is coming on the horizon for church leaders? We'd love to hear from you. Thanks, Matt and Todd, for the conversation, and we will certainly provide some links below for some resources that you can tap into.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. Happy to brighten your mood.